How are you? I am so excited to be here. Happy Tuesday. I know we usually have our coffee chats on Thursday, but life as a working mom means being flexible. And that means in order to get two working moms on camera at the same time, we needed to move things around. So I have a question for all of you. Last time I did a live video using StreamYard, nobody could hear me. So if you're watching, can you go ahead and put a thumbs up in the comments or react and let us know if you can hear us? I am going to try to work out some tech stuff here. I'm going to try to check it out on my phone and see if it's actually working. In the meantime, I will ask Brenaea to go ahead and introduce herself, and then I'll tell you why we are in this group, what we are going to talk about. You guys are going to love it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So glad to be here, Jen. Thanks for having me. My name is Brenaea Fairchild. I'm a homeschooling mom from two. We live in New Jersey. So I'm super passionate about education. My training is as an educator. I kind of thought homeschooling would kind of come really naturally to me. And in many ways it did. It's like, I love to create things for my children and to learn alongside them and to just journey with them through education. But over the time, I found that like my sweet spot is really encouraging other mamas, other home educators within this journey. So when I was working in the world of education, the education sector, that's what I did. I coached teachers, and more specifically, I ran programs within schools that would help struggling students. I would coach teachers on specific methodologies to help students who were really struggling in math and really struggling in reading based on educational research to help bring them up to par. So it's been really cool to kind of merge that with the educational world. So it's kind of, I just love working in here because it gives me a space to grow my own homeschool craft, but also just impact the lives of so many others and journey alongside so many other home educators. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I realized I muted the wrong thing. So you may have heard your own echo. I apologize. Technology and I do not always get along. Actually, it usually wins. So.
That's all right.
I have a win. I think they can hear us, so that's awesome.
Awesome.
All right. So what we're talking about today is a super hot topic that we have had asked in our community so many times, and it is about testing. So homeschool testing, should we do it? Should we not do it? We often have many moms come in and, we're homeschoolers and people have strong opinions about that. So I'm going to welcome your strong opinions. Please remember to be kind. But, one of the things that Brenea and I were talking about is, how do you, as working moms, we're trying to save time, we're trying to save money, but we also want to do what's best for our kids. Right. And it can be a struggle. Like, how do you figure out what your kids are ready to learn next? I know the value of having the right tools that help us save time and money. And that's one of the reasons I absolutely am so excited to have Brenaea here, because I don't know a lot about homeschool testing in the province I live in. So I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and we are not required to do homeschool testing. But that doesn't mean that, I didn't wonder, am I teaching my kids the right thing? Are my kids where they should be? How do I find those gaps? How do I fill in those gaps? Right. There are values in finding out these things. And as moms, we should have the right tools. And you guys know, I'm a big believer in education. So the more information, the more knowledge, the more education you have, then you can make the best decision for your homeschool. So we're going to tackle this question. We're going to dive in. I'm excited. I'm super excited too. And we had a bunch of questions come in. So I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm going to work my way through. All right. If you guys have questions, please leave them in the comments. There is a bit of delay for StreamYard and Facebook, so I will be flipping back and forth just to double check because sometimes they don't come through. If you guys leave a question and you're watching on replay, because I know as working moms, a lot of you won't be able to make it live, and that's perfectly okay. Go ahead and leave your questions anyways, and we'll get Brenaea to come in and answer them, or I will send them to her and she will. Awesome. All right.
Great.
So let's see.
So I love where you even just opened up, Jen, with this idea of kind of how do I know what my kids are supposed to learn? And so I think that's the thing for us homeschoolers about testing, right? Like testing is not to compare our children to other children, right? If we wanted to do that, we know we can put them in any other school and they would rank them right in a line. But what we really care about is like, hey, is what I'm doing working, and what do they need to learn next? Like, we're concerned about having gaps because sometimes we move from this curriculum to that curriculum, and this thing is different and that thing is different. So how do I really know what my third grader is supposed to be working on and supposed to be learning? And so I think that's a great question for homeschoolers to be asking and to consider as they're trying to choose what type of assessment do I need to use and what can I go into. So I'll let you start going through the questions. I just wanted to go ahead and hop in there because I think you're totally right that like where our hearts sit as homeschoolers is, hey, what do I really need to do to support my children? Not, hey, I want to measure my children to someone else. So yep, I'm totally with you there in that kind of framework.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. All right. So the first question was, why is this something that's so important to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started homeschooling and like, I love to teach. I like to say like, I'm the teacher's teacher. Like I just always have been like in the classroom, like, hey, can I create a lesson? Can I do this? So when I started homeschooling, I expected to just fall into it in that way. But the thing is, I'm a certified teacher, but that's for older kids. I'm certified to teach history and Spanish for 6th through 12th grade. Okay. I am not certified to teach kindergarten. So when my kindergartner started and it was like, oh, what is he supposed to be learning? Is this normal for writing? You know, we've all been in those Facebook groups. Does this handwriting look okay? Does this look all right? Right? Like we don't know. And so the thing is, when we talk about being practical, when we talk about what does it mean for us as working homeschool moms to balance it all, it means merging that experience with expertise. Okay. I like to say, like, I like to live in that intersection of experience plus expertise. So hearing from the experience of seasoned homeschool mamas, and then also pulling from the expertise of educational research. So when I was struggling with this, trying to figure out, hey, how do I know what my kindergartner is supposed to learn? This curriculum says this curriculum says this one feels too slow, this one feels too fast. And seeing that diversity, I said, I need a way to like streamline this, to benchmark, so that throughout our homeschooling years, I know that we're kind of making progress along a certain path. And so with that in mind, I finally hit me like, you know, a resource from your time in education. So like I shared, I used to go into school districts, hire a team of teachers and train them on specific methodologies. And we'd run this test. It's by an educational nonprofit known as NWEA. They have this test. It's actually run all around the world, like it's administered around the world. And the way that it works is that schools can purchase the test and go ahead to use it to get the exact learning statements that a child is ready to learn. So in my program, I was able to see amazing results. And, you know, the district administrators would come and say, how'd you get these results? And I'd say, because I knew exactly what they needed to learn, right? It wasn't like, hey, this is a 6th grader and they need to work on all 6th grade skills. It was, hey, this is a 6th grader and they need to learn how to add fractions with unlike denominators. That level of specificity is game changing when we're individualizing home education. And so when it finally hit me like, hey, you have something to do this with, I reached out and I said, hey, I want to go ahead and register as a school, an organization, so that we can go ahead and administer these things to homeschoolers. And so in that way, homeschool benchmark testing was born, so that homeschoolers have an organization to come to say, hey, I want to know the exact thing my child is ready to learn. Can you help me? And it's yes, you sit down, it's super flexible. Parents can test throughout the testing window anytime that works for them. So it's from like 9:38 Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern. You can come, you can take a break, you can pause, just all the things that make it convenient for homeschoolers. And then moms, dads still walk away with, and this is exactly what your child is ready to learn next.
That flexibility is so wonderful, because it's funny as homeschoolers, so this is kind of related. I had my son in a driving class, and of course, because I was like, there's no way I'm teaching that kid.
That's right. Outsource.
So I said to them, you know, he's a homeschooler, he can take lessons during like public school hours, and they never took advantage of that. They would always like try to cram it in between that like 3 and 5 o'clock period. And it was really frustrating. And I was like, but we're flexible, so take advantage of that. So it's really nice to find programs and courses that will work with your flexibility, especially as a working mom, because if you have to work, you know, that 9 to 3, then, you know, you have those few hours, or if you end up working like an afternoon shift, then you have the morning. So
right.
It's really nice.
Exactly. And, you know, the flexibility extends to like what it looks like in practice in our homes, because it's not like you get the data, the results from the test, and you say, now I have to create my own curricula. Now you say, I know exactly what chapters to work in our Saxon math book, and I don't have to go through every single one and do every single drill. Or if you use something like a Becca and you're like, if I get one more practice sheet, right? You say, okay, these are the practice problems we need to focus on and target, which keeps your child a lot more motivated. It helps you to focus your energy about how to support them. So yeah, it's been totally game changing. I just used our results recently we just started a unit on like themed in detective. So he has to become a great detective of this grade level to get to the next grade level. And it's just really great to say, these are the specific mechanics we need to work on. And I don't have to go through the entire summer math series book to go ahead and make sure that we get to where we need to go. So,
which is really nice.
Yeah.
So most of the members of this group are homeschooling. They've been homeschooling for a while. We have some that are brand new, but we are a worldwide group. So some live in states and provinces that do require testing, and some don't. And some of those that do require testing, like I know you guys come in here and you're talking about you're not too happy about doing it. You kind of resent.
Yeah.
Not too good. You're allowed to resent. But why? So you kind of talked about this already, but just to summarize, like, why do you think it's important for homeschoolers to test?
Right. So I think it's really important for us to reframe what it means to assess our children, right? We're assessing all the time. We read something and we say, hey, what was the key point? Hey, what did this character say? And we take note of things and we're like, oh, wait, they really didn't know to capitalize that letter, or they really didn't write. We take note of those things. But the thing is, as homeschooling moms, especially if you have more than one, and when you're working, there are so many things to take note of. And it really is just that support of something that's taking a note for you. And you'll look through and you'll say, yes, I have seen that. I forgot. Let me put that back on my radar. Yes, let's make sure we really intentionally address that. So I think when we shift from thinking that a test is a judgment, and more so it's a way to take the temperature. The analogy I like to give is like, it's like cooking. No one cooks the whole meal without trying it. And you don't try it and you don't throw it out and say, oh, I'm so angry I tried it. How dare it be bland? You add some salt, right? You add some more water. You add what you need. And so just considering it a bit of test tasting for how your homeschool is going, so you know what needs a little bit more love, what's doing well, and can just, stay the way that it's going. It just kind of gives us that. And then it really gives us, I feel like, the freedom where we kind of, many homeschool moms always have in the back of their minds nagging, am I doing enough? Is this enough, right? And the truth is, as homeschooling mamas, you are enough, right? I am enough. We are enough. And some days we do enough, and some days are harder. And so it's really just nice when I'm having a tired day, or when I'm saying, man, I've got a lot on my plate. I'm working, I'm homeschooling. What exactly do we need to work on to be able to have that support that comes alongside us on the journey that says, oh yes, this is a skill that we could go ahead and sit down and think about and work on today. So just in that, I think it's really, really empowering. And I think it can help us reclaim what society has taken as like testing is so bad, it's so scary, it's high stakes, it's really stressful. Where no, we regularly want to assess ourselves. We regularly want to self-reflect. We want to teach our children to be people who say, hey, what did I like? How I have my son correct his own papers, right? Even at almost 6 years old, I say, hey, go through, what letter did you think did you try your best on? Okay, circle that, right? We want them to do that kinds of things. And so this kind of empowers us to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I loved how you said about being intentional, because as working moms who homeschool, we are intentional with our time and our energy and our, all of our tools. So we need to be intentional in our homeschool too. I think that's great. So I'm going to bring in Tanya's question here because it was very similar to one of the ones that we had. And she had a really great question about testing. She says, and I'm just going to read it because I don't want to miss anything. She said, if I'm going to consider academic benchmark testing, is there a specific type of test that I should consider because it is more accurate or more reliable?
Right.
Can you answer this and tell us, how this test that you have is different?
Right. That's a really good question. So there are tests out there like the Stanford or the CAT, and those types of tests pretty much just put your child in a grade. They say, great, they passed 7th grade, or they're in 8th grade reading, or 5th grade math, right? It gives you that grade level. And so if you're looking to test just for a state requirement, and that's all that's important to you, those tests will do that for you. It'll give you that information. I think for most of us, we desire a lot more to not just have that, oh, what grade is my child in, especially because we know as homeschool, grade is subjective, like what grade and what subject, right? We know it's subjective, and we really want the information from the test of like, okay, so what are they supposed to work on? And so this test is different in the way that, I mean, you get like a 20-page report for each subject. So you can test in math, reading, and for those over second grade, also language, which is kind of like writing mechanics. And so your child's able to take all 3 of those tests 3 times per year. I'll talk about that in a second because I know that might sound like a lot. 3 times per year, and each time you get a full report in each subject that says this is where they're doing well and this is what needs more reinforcement. This is how they're doing. It will give you that kind of score, so you have them on a benchmark of, compared to other peers their age, you know, they're performing at the 70th percentile, right? So 7 students would be below them on this test, and 3 would be above them, that kind of idea. So it will give you that piece of data, but that's one very small piece of this much larger report that tells you, okay, and these are the things you want them to work on next. So for example, like I talked to you about that specificity, for fractions, it will say to you, hey, it won't just say your child needs to work on fractions. It'll say they need to work on adding fractions with like denominators, or adding fractions with unlike denominators, or subtracting, and it will only have the ones that they need to work on. So no 2 children get the same exact report. No 2 children get the same exact learning statement. So it just really gives us the information that we need. And I want to say one thing about the testing 3 times a year, because sometimes parents are like, oh, I will never do that. So let me say, our homeschool year for many of us is 12 months. Some of us, we do maybe 9 or 10 months, but it's all year long. And so again, going back to that test tasting analogy, is you go ahead and you assess in August to say, okay, this is where we're starting, this is what we need to learn. Then you go ahead and you assess again in December, and you check in and you say, wow, look at these skills we're able to accomplish. And it's plotted on a graph about how your child has moved up and what the change has been like. And then you're able to do it again in April, and you say, wow, we've covered even more skills. And it helps you to sort of recalibrate and know what you're doing. And sometimes you'll find, wow, that first test in August, we really need to work on math. And so you see math shoot up, but then you realize you're kind of rejecting reading. And so you need to do that. So it really is just a way to help you stay the course throughout your homeschooling journey, while also giving you such flexibility, because whatever curriculum you're using, it works, right? Your curriculum is going to cover pronouns. It's going to cover fractions. It's going to cover multiplication. It's going to cover all the things that the different skills that your child will need to work on. And if it's not, then you say, wait a second, this curriculum may need to be reevaluated, right? But you know that it's going to go through those things. That's right. So you know it's going to go through those things. And so it's really not just that getting that grade, but this test, homeschool benchmark testing, what it really does is says, okay, and I'm here to help you. This is what you need to work on next. This is what your child's ready to learn next. And I feel like I should have said this earlier because I say it all the time, but it also gives us grounds to celebrate. Because I haven't had one parent yet respond and say, I got the results to my assessment and this is terrible. They're either like, wow, I feel so encouraged because I know we're on the right track. Or they say, wow, this is a lot for me to chew on, but I'm so glad we did this because now I know what I really need to be focusing on next. So both ways, parents have something to celebrate and to rejoice in the fact that we're moving forward in the ways that we really want to be.
Yeah, I can see this being super helpful as well, because when life is always changing. As working moms, right. I always say, get everything together and use it until it stops working, because parenting, kids are going to throw a wrench in your plans every time. So it seems to really help you if life has happened and you've had to take time off homeschooling, like your structured homeschooling, or your seat work, as I like to call it, and you've had to go more on schooling approach while you got through some hard times. This seems like a really great tool to help you see, where you might not be where you think you are, and then how far ahead you actually are. Because our kids learn a lot without books. And I know we have a lot of new members coming in and they're asking, about curriculum, but I think this might be a really great way to measure too what our kids are learning when they're not necessarily homeschooling.
Right.
They're learning through games, what they're learning through play, and you'd be surprised.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
The next question we had was, how will this test help us as working homeschool moms? I think you've touched on that quite a bit. But if you have anything else you want to add there.
I might just add what you said, which is like this on schooling, like when we're on the go, just having, so for example, we went through a season, lots of people had like hard seasons this last year as we're kind of getting through COVID, etc. And so when it felt like we couldn't sit down every day, me being able to say, well, we're reading, right? That's what we all say. We're like, we're just going to read and do some math today, right? When we go ahead and say, I'm like, we're reading today. The fact that I had those points that, needs to learn how to pull out three main details from a text, then I just kind of knew what question I wanted to ask each time that we sat down to read a book. And so it really does just give that level of flexibility and just gives us the insight to say, yes, okay, this is the thing that I want to be focused on working on.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to talk a little bit about testers, because I have 2 children, and if you have more than one child, you will soon discover that they are often nothing alike. What works for one, and you're so happy that you figured this out, yeah, it totally didn't work for the other.
Right.
So one of my children would freeze when it came to tests, or if there was a timer on the screen. I know we just had this discussion in the group. People were asking about typing programs, and they said if there's like a clock or a timer, it would stress them out. So this is a test. A lot of kids freak out. What is the testing like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love that you asked this question, because I think it gets at the heart of how when homeschoolers test is different, right? We're looking at our whole child. We're trying to tend to their heart. We're trying to tend to them emotionally. We don't want them to be scarred. So I just love this question because I feel like it captures the homeschool heart when we're trying to say, okay, how can we best support our children? So the test is extremely low stress. So it takes place normally over the span of a week. You can log in anytime during the testing window during that week. So normally it's Monday through Friday. We have a bonus testing session coming up just next week. That will be from Tuesday to Thursday, but most months it's Monday through Friday, 9:30 Eastern to 5 p.m. Family can log in at any time, stop at any time, and come back to resume at any time. So in that way, it's a totally untimed test. And the reason that it's untimed, so I mentioned to you, the creator of the test, it was an educational nonprofit. So the focus is to really find out what our kids are ready to learn. Not to go ahead and say, what can you do? It's not the SAT, right? It's not high stakes. What can you do in this amount of time compared to everyone else? It's how can we use this information to help support you as a learner? So it's an untimed test. There is a demo test, a practice test provided. So once someone goes ahead and register, you'll get access to the demo test that lets children go ahead and see, okay, this is what it's like. These are what the questions will be like. We also provide a video that just helps parents help the kids think through mindset work around testing, getting them excited about celebrating, getting excited about like, hey, you don't even have to call it a test. You can call it an assessment. You can call it a check-in. That's what I call it. I call it a check-in in our home. Which is, hey, we're gonna do your academic check-in so we know what you gotta learn next, right? And so when I've decided in my heart that this doesn't define us, it's a lot easier for my child also to say, this doesn't define us. Try your best, that's it. And if you need to work on it, great. We know what you need to do next and we'll keep going. The test is adaptive. So it gets harder with each question that the child gets correct, and it gets a little bit easier with each one they get incorrect. And what this does is it helps us directly pinpoint where the child is, right? So, oh, this was too hard, I'm down a little bit, okay, this was too easy, okay, until we find, okay, they're regularly getting these right and wrong, this is the level that they're on. So that's really powerful information for us. And so what I like to tell parents all the time, sometimes we get emails in the middle of testing session, I just say, your children can do hard things. And I know you know that, so just go ahead and tell them, right? Because sometimes it'll be like, this question is too hard. And it's like, whoa, your brain is really working out. I know you can do it. Try your best, go on to the next one. And they'll have several questions.
You just see where you're down, and you need to keep the volume down.
Okay.
So you're being heard outside.
Sorry. In the library. See when you have to.
And again, you need to have that.
I heard you.
No.
Thank you. In the library, going ahead and whatchamacallit, let me grab my mask really quickly. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So this is the life, right, of being a working homeschool mom. You say, let me sneak out the house so I'm not interrupted by the kids, and the librarian comes. And the librarian comes. So I'm just going to keep a mask going just because, I mean, I'm in an enclosed room, but I guess it's the library's rule. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Can you hear
That
me?
is life as we know it right now. So,
Yes.
and I love, as working moms, we make it work, right?
Right.
Things
That's
come up,
exactly right.
we just keep going.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So one of the things that you mentioned that I really appreciated was the wording. You know, I tell moms all the time that as moms, we believe the things that we tell ourselves, and our kids are the same way. Like, they believe the things that they tell themselves, they believe the things that we tell them. And so the phrase that you said is, you can do hard things. I know you can do hard things. So as working moms, we do hard things and we set that example, but we need to tell our kids and remind them and empower them that they can do hard things.
Right. That's exactly right.
That is really great. Right, so you talked a little bit about what the test looks like, and earlier you mentioned report. So once you test, do you want to walk us through the steps of like what's next, what is the report, and then one of the questions we got was like, now I've got this report, what do I do with the information?
Exactly. Great question. So you register for the assessment. Once you register, you'll instantly get access to, you'll create a academic profile for your child. And that's just kind of when you give us all their information, you know, what grade they're in, and, you know, what just their background information. It takes about 2 minutes per child. It doesn't take very long at all. And then that allows us to put them in the system. From there, you'll also get access to the Getting Started Testing Guide, which will walk you through the video that does, like I said, it tells you about how to access a demo test. It tells you how you can get started on testing day. It'll tell you how to frame the language for your child. And then from there, you're good to go until the testing session opens up. Once the testing session opens up, you'll get an email a few days before. You'll get an email each day of the testing session. You can always opt out of those daily emails if you're like, we're not testing this session. That's totally fine. It's just, I know what homeschool life is like and we forget. So go ahead, it'll send you that reminder. And then the day of testing, like I said, it's super flexible. You log in when convenient for you. You go ahead, you test. We have a proctor virtually that's administering. So if you have any questions, someone's there to help you. And then from there, you're able to, within 3 days, so 3 days after the close of the testing session, you'll receive your results. And your family has its own portal. So all of your children will be right in one portal. And you'll be able to go in and you'll be able to go ahead and print out those PDF results. And they come with a video explanation that takes you through each report, explaining you what happens step by step. So it says, hey, this means this. This means this. There's a video that says what to work on next in math, what to work on next in reading. And there's some actually really cool free integrations. So one of them is for math. So you can actually take your math scores and plug them into Khan Academy, and it will tell you the exact Khan Academy lessons they're ready to learn next. So some really cool things that just kind of give you the tools that you need to go ahead and take those next steps.
That is really cool. And I know a lot of our moms are super familiar with Khan Academy. So that's really great, especially where I love the video idea, because when you get a video, you can stop, you can replay, you can go back, you can watch it again, especially if you're interrupted with your kids or your phone, which is, remember I said every time I get on live, my phone rings, it's ringing. I actually remember to mute it this time.
Go you.
Just like,
right, I understand.
All right, so we already so when I was looking at the program, it says that registration covers 3 tests a year. And I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but can you remind us, like, why do you recommend that homeschoolers test so often?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I know 3 sounds like a lot, but when you reframe the fact that you are regularly assessing your child day by day and trying to take note of things, you're like, oh, 3 times over the course of 12 months is actually not that frequent. And it really is. You can choose to purchase the test and just test once. That is totally your prerogative. I recommend that you do it at least twice a year because it helps you keep pace. And it also helps you to celebrate, man, we are moving forward. We wanted to work on fractions and we did. And now fractions are no longer on our need to focus on, right? On our need to focus on statements. Now we're focusing on, division or whatever the next thing is. And so it's just really empowering to see that growth over time, but also to keep us from teetering from one end to another. Because I think one thing that happens is we realize math skills are low, like let me focus on math, and then we haven't read a book and have realized, oh, reading skills are low, right? That's what happens. And so it kind of helps us keep that middle ground, and at any point to be able to have a help. Because if you take a test in September and then you pull out in February and you're like, what do we need to work on? It's not going to be as accurate as it would if you just took it again, right, in December or January, because there's been learning over that time period. So that's why it's to empower you. You cannot take one test and tell you what you need to do for the year. right? You're able to measure her growth. And research shows that most learning, you can measure growth normally after about 10 to 12 weeks. So it allows you to take it over that 10 to 12 weeks. So that's what the research says. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to dive into the questions that was submitted, but
Awesome.
I'm going to check. So I'm going to flip and check to see if anyone left us some comments. While I do that, do you want to tell us like about the test and how much it costs and how we can sign up, and then we'll dive into their questions?
For sure. So you can go directly to homeschoolbenchmarktesting.com to get all of the details on the test, everything we've shared here about how it's really low stress. You can test 3 times a year. The subjects that are covered, it covers grades K through 12, so the whole gamut of homeschool. You can get all the details there. When you click register my child right now, know that we have 2 upcoming testing sessions. So right now we're in June 2021. We're having a bonus testing session just next week. So that'll be for 3 days next week. And then our next session is again in August. So if you're like, hey, I want to have this in preparation for the school year, sign up so you can go ahead and test next week. And you can also use the code PBD, so Practical by Design, to go ahead and get 10% off by default, to get 10% off of your testing session, okay? So go ahead, homeschoolbenchmarktesting.com, and then PBD will give you that 10% off. So yeah, it's really easy to sign up. Everything is automated and it'll take you directly through the process.
Okay, I think I got that right.
Yep.
That's my comments. There we go. It was practical by default. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And don't worry, I think it was you actually. I misspelled my own website or my own email. I'm like, yeah, it's this, and I'm like, why am I not getting this email?
I know.
Oh, I missed.
I understand.
So don't worry about it all. When you don't know your own.
I know. I totally understand. It's like, how many things can I juggle? Oh, let me just take that head off.
It's like when they ask for my phone number at appointments. I'm like, I never call myself. I don't know my phone.
That's right.
All right. So we only have a few questions that were submitted, but they're really good. So Kimberly asked, if you have multiple children of different ages, how do you choose the right test for each child?
Right. So, my completely unbiased answer is going to be, you should take homeschool benchmark testing for all the children. Honestly, because what you want is a test that's going to go ahead and tell you, this is where my child is in each of these things, right? So the thing is that homeschool benchmark testing puts your child on a continuum. So instead of just saying 3rd grade or 4th grader, like we talked about, it says, oh, these skills in this 3rd grade level, these skills on the 4th grade level, these skills on the 2nd grade level, right? Because we normally find them overlapping in that way. It will tell you exactly what those next skills are going to be. So you want a test, whatever test you're choosing, is one that's going to put them on a learning continuum. One that says, hey, this is where your child is. These are the skills right before or right after that they need to go ahead and to work on. And so any quality test should do that. I want to warn you that if you go ahead and you say, oh, well, I'm going to take, the Stanford or the CAT for a 5th grader, then you're only going to get information surrounding those 5th grade skills and 5th grade test scores. And that is often when the challenge is. The test is either too easy or too hard. And for some kids, it will be just right. And that's okay, right? That works. But for many, it's not, right? Because no one's average, right? Everyone's different. So that's a great question. So I would just say looking for a test that puts you on a continuum. And that's what homeschool benchmark testing does. It puts them on that continuum so they can see the skills before and after. So you don't have to worry about being trapped in a 2nd grade test because it's adaptive. So if your 2nd grader is ready to go up to 5th grade skills, it takes them there. If your 5th grader needs to make it down to 3rd grade skills, it'll take them there. So you know exactly what they're ready to work on.
That's a really good point, because you don't want to be locked in. Like, as we said, as homeschoolers, our kids are often like above in some sections, below in some sections. And so we never like grade level or age level, they're above or below. So it's important for the test to be able to do that.
Right.
Okay, so we have Tanya asking about the results. She asks, how do I interpret those results and use them to move forward? So like, how do we close the gap, show up in the test independent from the programs we are using for our homeschool?
Right, great question. So the one thing is, because it gives you just learning statements, you're able to take those and to sit down and have a date with your curricula, all right? So if you're like, oh, needs to work on pronouns, needs to work on using correct punctuation, needs to work on, and those are the things that are there, you're able to open up whatever book you use and say, that's this lesson, that's this lesson, that's this lesson. and go ahead and merge it there. So that's a manual way you can do it. Like I said, there's also these more automatic ways specifically for math, that free Khan Academy link, where you would take the Khan Academy, that you would take the homeschool benchmark testing results and plug them into this Khan Academy, a resource that then will allow you to go ahead and to connect and say, these are the exact lessons in Khan Academy that they're ready to go through and to work on. So again, an easier way to help you close the gap in that way.
Yeah, I really liked that you brought that out earlier, and I wanted to answer the question again here because I think it's a really good question. Is, you get those results, what do you do with them? And her second question was kind of similar because, as we mentioned before, like some tests will say, they'll do the standardized testing or they'll do the testing that's required by state, and they'll learn, say, that the kid struggles with addition. Right. And so if they're in the traditional school environment, their answer to this problem is just to give them more addition worksheets.
Right.
Okay, we're going to bury them in addition worksheets. And the only thing that creates is your child, one, ends up hating worksheets, and two, hates addition.
Right.
And so nobody wants to do that, right? It's not a walk in the park for mom. It's not a walk in the park for kid. It causes tension in the homeschool. So we want to avoid options. I like the fact that you said it connects to Khan Academy. Would there be anything else that you would add?
I think that would be the main thing is that, so we have been thinking about, there are some instructional links that we've been thinking about bringing on board. So I would just say that I've been testing out a few things because some moms have been like, I just want to put them into, one of those great programs that districts do have access to a lot of resources that as homeschoolers, sometimes we don't. So we are thinking and looking into that on our end because we've had enough parents ask. It's like, great, I could do it with my curriculum, but I'd rather just do it over here. Is there a way to do it? So I will say that it is something that we've been actively thinking about. And I'll also just say that like the test data really does give you what you need to know to go ahead and to use whatever you have. It's so freeing. You don't get tied into one curriculum or anything, to use whatever you have to say, this is what we need to work on. Okay.
And I know you also answered Rebecca's question a bit. It says, how often should we be giving these tests to expect growth? So that's what we want to focus on. I know charter school does this 3 times a year, but I think it has to do with requirements and not necessarily what's best for the child.
Right. So charter schools in most states are normally only required to test once, maybe twice a year. So some states require twice. So it's most likely because charter schools, their whole angle is like, hey, we care more about the children than maybe the traditional public school, and we want to focus on growth. And so that 3 times a year mark is research based, like I said, because you expect to see growth about every 10 to 12 weeks academically. Like you need enough time. So some parents feel like, can I test again next month? And it's like, no, you can't, because you're not going to see enough growth within a month. But over the course of 12 weeks, for sure you will.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's important because you don't want, like you said, you don't want to test too often. You haven't even given the child a chance to grow. So that's important. So Rebecca asked, how do they decide where kids should be? And is it based on a particular province standard? She's located.
That's a great question. Yeah, so NWEA, which is an educational nonprofit, and like administers this test, allows schools to administer this test rather, all throughout the world. So it's not subject. So the way that normative data is created is by giving the test to enough 5th graders, to enough 10-year-olds, to enough 8-year-olds to then go ahead and say, on average, this is where a child who is in this age at this time of the year and this grade would fall. And that's where we're able to get that piece of data from. Does that make sense? And then the learning statements that you come out that are pulled from that are pretty much learning statements that every country, every state calls them different things. Every state gives them different numbers and different letters, but they all say the same thing. The kid has to learn how to add. So whether you say this is, learning statement kindergarten A1, or whether you say this is AK1, like, whatever order you put it in, they're still focused on the same exact skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. All right, we've got a question from Jamie, and I really like this question. She was very specific. She said, tests have generally been useless for us. I cannot find a test that gives us accurate results or useful information for my learner. She is a highly intelligent child with ADHD, combined type dysgraphia, and dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
Tests overestimate and underestimate her skills, sometimes within the same test. Will this test, that's the one that you're talking about, provide us useful information? And can the word spacing and size be adjusted?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are specific accommodations and accessibility things that can be accommodated. So if you're thinking about registering, reach out directly to me, because I could go ahead and say, oh, let me look at this, let me look at that, to go ahead and see, because as an organization, there's kind of a list of acceptable ones. Generally, any kind of like approved accommodations that you regularly make in your homeschool would most likely be acceptable with the test, right? With the extent of you can't give the answer, they can't use a calculator, right? If it's supposed to be something they're able to compute by hand. Now, computing by hand might mean that they use an adaptive software that they normally would use to compute, versus going ahead and writing it out if that's a need for the child, right? So we have had families with children of varying abilities go ahead and take it and have had still gotten those great results. So to your question of, yes, will it tell you, either underestimating or overestimating, is like, yes. So the whole idea between making it untimed, making it low stress, and allowing accommodations is that those things don't get in the way of us figuring out what we really want to know, which is what your child needs to work on next. So if I have that timer there, then, handwriting is getting in the way. Maybe my test anxiety is getting in the way. All of those things are tripping me out. But when that timer is gone, when I'm able to use the tools that I already have, and then I get a whole sheet of, hey, they got this type of question wrong enough times that I know that they really need to work on pronouns, right? Then you go ahead and you say, okay, great, this is actually a skill that they need to work on. So I will say I've not heard anything yet, and I've not seen myself. I told you I used to run this program within schools, it being inaccurate to what students need to work on. And actually, sometimes I've even challenged it. I'm like, no, my kid, he knows how to do this. And then I try to do it, and I'm like, you really don't know how to do this. Like, we take the one or two times that they were able to maybe do something or other things that link it together as full evidence, but this kind of gives us a larger picture. Or sometimes it's like they almost are there, but they need a little bit more reinforcement, and this is what helps us to push them over the edge.
Yeah, I was thinking of sometimes I could swore I taught my kids something, like absolutely positive I've taught them, and then time goes by and you're like, oh, I totally forgot to teach you how to make change out of a dog.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, okay, maybe we should go back and do that. So I bet testing would have helped.
Yes, exactly that.
All right, I am going to check. I think we had one question come in from Abigail. Okay. Well, actually, she has two, but I think you already answered them, but I'll ask them both and we'll make sure she gets her answer. So the first one was, how does this test differ from state-required standardized testing? And the second question was, does this type of test tell you specific skills within each subject your child should work on?
Right. Great question. We answered both of them, but I'm happy to wrap them up with it. So yes, NWEA is literally administered in every state, like across this United States and all throughout the world. So lots of states give freedom with what exact test you're taking, as long as it is something that's kind of matched to national standards. So this test can satisfy that requirement. That being said, it takes it a step further, because it go ahead and it would give you those list of learning statements, so you know exactly what to do next. So it's different than another test that might just say third grader, fourth grader, second grader, etc., because it goes ahead and gives you that what you need to work on next. So that's that question. The other part of the question is, hey, what about those learning statements? And so I will just say it's broken down in details, even within, I told you there's 3 tests, math, reading, and then language, which is like writing mechanics for second grade and up. And within those tests, you get the subheaders and then subtopics within those subheaders for the things you need to work on. So within the math test, you would have the geometry section. You'd have the numbers and operations section. You'd have the algebraic thinking section. And then within each of those, you would have those specific skills of which you would see under algebraic thinking, under numbers and operations, under geometry, etc., for those things. So it's a lot of detail, which is why we provide those data videos, so families aren't overwhelmed when you go ahead and you get that information, because we can help you break it down and walk through step by step. Okay,
I have a question. When they finish the test, they get the report. How long do they have access to the report and the videos?
That's a great question. So you will have access to your report and your videos for 1 year. And then you can always print them out. They're yours forever. But as it relates to having access to your specific Family Hub portal, which is hosted online, which we host for you, that will all be available online for a year. And many families, will choose to test again, and then their portal stays up there and their data will all stay up there, of course.
Okay. And if you guys have any other questions, it looks like Brianna is in our group because it allowed me to tag her.
Yep.
Technology. Yay.
Yay.
So if you guys have questions, I know a lot of you will be watching on the replay. Please tag us, tag me, tag her, tag someone, and we will make sure that you get these questions answered. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us and answer, because this is such a hot topic. It's, we get asked about testing all the time in this group, and I feel like the more that we know, the more, if we have a safe place where we can ask questions without judgment and get solid answers, it will help us make the best decision for our kids.
Exactly.
And that's what we want. And I want to thank you so much for making this work. I know it's not easy being in public surrounded by people, but you really are a pro at this.
Yes, thank you for your grace. I have a toddler at home, and I said there's no way we could hop on a Tuesday morning being here, but apparently the library's rules are still a little bit different than I knew, so thank you. This has been really good.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, let us know, and thanks for hanging out with us today, and I will see you on Thursday.
See ya. Bye-bye.